Alfred Hitchcock harbored a deep, vocal disdain for conventional Hollywood films. To him, the standard dialogue-heavy features of his era were nothing more than photographs of people talking. The sheer calculation behind this disdain is preserved on tape. In 1962, French filmmaker François Truffaut recorded over 12 hours of interviews with Hitchcock. The transcripts reveal a director operating less like a spontaneous artist and entirely like a meticulous engineer. Hitchcock subscribed to a doctrine he called pure cinema. He argued that the true power of the medium existed entirely independent of spoken dialogue, relying instead on the precise geometric assembly of visual information to force an emotional reaction. This timeline diagram breaks down the core mechanism of pure cinema, using his famous bomb-under-the-table metaphor to distinguish between surprise and suspense. A sudden explosion offers 15 seconds of sudden shock. But if the audience sees the ticking bomb under the table, and the characters continue to converse banally above it, you manufacture 15 minutes of agonizing tension. The terror lives entirely in that gap of knowledge. By intentionally withholding vital visual information from the characters while granting it to the viewer, pure cinema functions as an engineered psychological trap. It strips moviegoers of their passivity and turns them into helpless participants. To execute that trap, the physical act of shooting the film was treated as a tedious formality. Hitchcock believed the actual directing happened at the writer's desk and the storyboard table. He employed a ruthless defensive strategy known as editing in the camera. By filming only the exact, mathematically pre-planned fragments of action required for a sequence, he ensured that studio executives had no alternative angles to recut his visual math in post-production. When it came time to execute those fragments on the soundstage, he relied almost exclusively on the 50mm prime lens. This top-down geometric diagram shows exactly why. Unlike a wide-angle lens, which visibly curves and distorts the spatial grid, the optical compression of a 50mm lens mimics the exact field of view of the human retina. By strictly locking the focal length to human perception, the camera dissolves. It stops being a mechanical piece of glass and becomes your actual eyes, trapping you physically inside the diegetic space of the narrative. Once inside that space, every compositional choice dictates where your brain focuses. This is governed by a principle known as Hitchcock's rule. The physical size of an object within the cinematic frame must directly equal its immediate narrative importance. If the camera executes a slow, deliberate dolly into an extreme close-up on a glass of milk, the magnification acts like a blaring brass crescendo. The sheer scale of the object on the screen forces you to feel the threat. He would violently contrast this intimacy with extreme high-angle shots, pulling the camera straight up to the ceiling. This God's eye view abruptly strips you of your emotional connection to the protagonist, reducing the characters to tiny figures on a map. Alternating between those massive, oppressive close-ups and omniscient high angles creates relentless psychological whiplash. You are bounced between intimate complicity and chilling, fatalistic detachment. But the camera is only half the equation. Hitchcock revered the editing room as the brain of the operation, viewing montage as the specific art of editing human behavior over time. He aggressively utilized the Kuleshov effect, a shot of a character looking, a separate shot of the object they see, and a cut back to their reaction. This specific rhythm forces you to interpret physical reality strictly through the subjective filter of the protagonist's mind. The ultimate stress test of this theory is the shower sequence in Psycho, which altered the established grammar of cinematic suspense. Rather than showing a continuous theatrical act of violence, the sequence bombards the viewer with over 70 rapid cuts. In under 3 minutes, it's a staccato rhythm of impressionistic, disjointed visual fragments, calculated to induce extreme cognitive overload. Yet, if you break the scene down frame by frame, the knife never actually pierces flesh on the screen. The rapid montage forces your brain to bridge the gaps between the splices. You stitch the visual fragments together yourself, meaning the true violence happens entirely in the dark corners of your own imagination. This doctrine of pure cinema extended far beyond the camera lens in the physical film's place. It demanded obsessive control over the entire sensory environment of the theater. In Vertigo, the psychological manipulation relies on color theory. By aggressively polarizing vibrant reds against sickly greens, the lighting scheme subconsciously maps out a psychological web of deceit, ghosts, and obsession before a word is spoken. In The Birds, he abandoned a traditional musical score entirely. Instead, he weaponized an early synthesizer to generate unnatural subharmonics and stretches of electronic silence, leaving the audience completely unmoored without musical cues to guide their emotions. Hitchcock's influence persists because he defined the exact rules for spatial perspective, temporal pacing, and narrative suspense. He codified an operational grammar that serves as the foundation for global visual storytelling. Pure cinema demonstrates that by mathematically manipulating lenses, cuts, and light, a director bypasses the intellect entirely. They speak directly to the human nervous system, playing the viewer's physiological response like a tuned instrument.